What if I told you there's a place in America where you can live your best life? I'm talking a 2-bedroom apartment, a storage unit for all your questionable life choices, and a therapist on retainer. And you'd still have money left over for takeout every single night. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, it is. But the only catch is, you might be the last person on the block with a heartbeat. We talk about the housing crisis like it's this universal plague, a nationwide storm raining down eviction notices. But that's not true. In some cities, the crisis is reversed. The problem isn't that there are too many people and not enough homes, it's that there are too many homes and not enough people. These aren't just the cheapest places to live. No, no, no. This isn't a budget list your parents would send you. This is a map of places where economics, politics, and human weirdness collide. We're going deep into the Zillow rabbit hole, past the shiny new condos in Austin, past the shoeboxes in New York, to the places where the listings have a single blurry photo and the description just says needs TLC. These are cities with skeletons in their closets, ghosts in their attics, and rent solo it feels like a typo. They're trying to lure you in with cash, with promises, with the dream of homeownership. But what's the real price of that dream? We're peeling back the layers on 10 American cities with shockingly low rent to find out what's really going on. We're talking about the good, the bad, and the deeply, deeply strange. We're going to look at why these places are so cheap and what it actually costs to live there, beyond the dollar signs. Because your realtor will show you the granite countertops, but they won't tell you why the last 3 families left in the middle of the night, like this video if you've ever scrolled Zillow, just to feel something. Subscribe if you want the truth no realtor is ever going to tell you because rent may be cheap, but the wrong move, that's expensive. Alright, first up, Tulsa, Oklahoma. You might have heard of it because they're literally paying people to move there. The Tulsa Remote Program dangles a crisp $10,000 check in front of you and says, hey, you work from home, come work from our home. And with rent for a 2-bedroom hovering around $850, that 10 grand goes a long way. You can finally start that artisanal pickle company you've been dreaming of. The city is desperate for new blood, for a fresh coat of millennial gray paint on its old-school image. They're building bougie food halls. They've got a world-class park called The Gathering Place. It's like they're trying to manifest Austin, Texas, through sheer force of will. But here's the thing about a city throwing money at you. You gotta ask why. Tulsa has a vacancy rate over 10%. That's a lot of empty apartments, a lot of landlords getting real lonely. For every trendy new coffee shop, there's a block that feels a little forgotten. And while the city is trying to rebrand itself as this cool, progressive hub in the middle of the heartland, the numbers tell a slightly different story. The crime rate, particularly for violent crime, is significantly higher than the national average. It's this weird paradox. You're sipping a $7 latte in the arts district, but you're also double-checking if you locked your car. Tulsa is a city with an identity crisis. It's caught between its rugged oil tycoon past and its desperate-to-be-hip future. On one hand, you have this incredible, vibrant culture. The music scene is legit, the people are genuinely friendly, and there's this real sense of community. But on the other hand, you have the lingering ghosts of history, like the 1921 race massacre, and the very real modern problems of poverty and crime, that don't make it into the glossy promotional brochures. They're trying so hard to be the next big thing, you can almost feel the city holding its breath. So, is the $10,000 worth it? It depends. Are you a pioneer, or do you just want cheap rent? Because moving to Tulsa isn't just changing your address, it's buying into a project. You're part of the experiment. The city is betting on people like you to fix it, to fill the empty spaces and make it cool. The question is, are you willing to bet on Tulsa? Because that $10,000 can disappear pretty fast if you realize you bet on the wrong horse in the middle of Oklahoma. Next, we head northeast to Rochester, New York, home of Kodak, Xerox, and a whole lot of cheap apartments. We're talking a median rent under $720. That's not a typo, that's less than most people's car payments. For that price, you're not getting a closet in Queens. You're getting an actual apartment with, like, walls and a door. On paper, it looks incredible. You can finally afford to have a guest room that isn't just an air mattress you have to inflate with your own exhausted breath every time your cousin visits. The city has beautiful old architecture, a rich history, and it's a stone's throw from the Finger Lakes. Sounds charming, right? But that low rent is a symptom of a deeper sickness. Rochester's a classic Rust Belt story. When giants like Kodak crumbled, the economic shockwave leveled the city, and it never fully recovered. The population has been shrinking for decades. All those people leaving means a whole lot of empty houses. The vacancy rate is flirting with 12%. That's a city with more goodbyes than hellos. And empty buildings in a struggling economy. That's a recipe for trouble. Rochester's property and violent crime rates are both alarmingly high, making headlines for all the wrong reasons. And then there's the weather. Oh, the weather. Rochester winters are not for the faint of heart. We're talking brutal, soul-crushing, lake-effect snow that buries your car, your hopes and your dreams under a thick blanket of icy despair. It's the kind of cold that makes you question all your life choices. The sun basically clocks out in October and doesn't show up for work again until April. It's a 6-month-long test of your will to live, fueled by Wegmans subs and a vitamin D deficiency. Living in Rochester is like dating someone with a great personality who is also haunted by the ghost of their much more successful ex. The city is constantly living in the shadow of its former glory. There are pockets of revival, cool little neighborhoods, and a fierce local pride. But the overarching vibe is one of faded grandeur and a tough, gritty struggle to stay relevant. That sub-$720 rent is tempting, but it comes with a side of economic anxiety and a 6-month free trial of seasonal depression. You save money on rent, but you might end up spending it all on snow tires and therapy lamps. Let's drift down south to Shreveport, Louisiana. If you're looking for rent that's dirt cheap, you've hit the jackpot. We're talking an average rent that makes Tulsa look like Beverly Hills. You can get a spacious place here for a price that feels like it's from 1995. The city sits on the Red River, straddling the line between Louisiana and Texas, and that's a perfect metaphor for Shreveport itself. It doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Is it part of the Deep South with all that Creole charm? Or is it more like East Texas with a cowboy swagger? The city can't decide, and that confusion hangs in the humid air. The reason for the low rent is simple and stark, a staggering 21% vacancy rate. 1 in every 5 homes is empty. Think about that. Walk down a street and every 5th house is just dark. It's not just a statistic, it's a feeling. It creates a sense of hollowness, of a place that's been partially abandoned. The economy has been on a roller coaster, propped up by oil, gas, and a casino industry that feels a little bit desperate. When those industries slump, the whole city feels it. People leave, and the houses they leave behind become silent monuments to a better time. This economic precarity fuels other problems. Shreveport struggles with one of the highest property crime rates in the country. People aren't just locking their doors, they're installing security systems that look like they belong at Fort Knox. It creates a climate of suspicion and unease that undermines the city's potential for that famous Southern hospitality. You want to be neighborly, but you're also wondering if your neighbor is casing your joint. It's a tough way to build community. So you have this city, blessed with a beautiful riverfront and a rich musical history. The legendary Louisiana Hayride radio show started here, launching stars like Elvis and Hank Williams, but it's haunted by empty houses and plagued by crime. It feels like a party that ended hours ago, but a few people are still lingering, unsure if they should call it a night, or try to get the music started again. Moving to Shreveport for the cheap rent is like finding a vintage designer suit at a thrift store for $5. It's an amazing deal, but it might not fit right, and you can't quite get rid of that faint, musty smell. Now, let's bounce over to Akron, Ohio, the rubber capital of the world. Or, at least, it used to be. These days, honestly, the only thing rubber about Akron might be how your budget bounces back, because the rent is so low it's cheaper than a month's worth of takeout. We're talking median rents that make you do a double take. You can live large here on a small salary. The city that gave the world Goodyear and Firestone is now practically giving away apartments. It's the kind of place where the American dream of owning a home with a yard doesn't feel like a cruel joke. But, you know, the ghost of the rubber industry looms large over Akron. When the tire factories closed down and moved away, they took the city's economic engine with them. What's left is a city that's been trying to reinvent itself for decades, with mixed results. The population has been steadily declining since the 1960s. That's over half a century of people packing their bags and saying, "See ya! That's why your rent is so cheap." There's more supply than demand. Landlords aren't competing for tenants. They're just hoping someone, anyone, will sign a lease. This constant struggle for a new identity gives Akron a specific flavor. It's not quite post-industrial decay, but it's not a thriving metropolis either. It's striving. You can see the effort everywhere. They've invested in downtown revitalization. They're trying to build a tech and research corridor. And LeBron James, the city's prodigal son, has poured money and hope back into his hometown. There's a palpable sense of we're trying. Okay, that is both endearing and a little bit sad. It's like watching your dad try to learn the latest TikTok dance. You appreciate the effort, but it's also slightly painful. So you move to Akron. You've got a huge apartment for pennies. You're saving a ton of money. But what's the social scene like? What are the job prospects if you're not a polymer scientist or a healthcare worker? The city is quiet. The winters are gray and long, just like in Rochester. You might save a fortune on rent, but you're living in the shadow of a bygone era, in a city that's still figuring out its second act. It's a cheap place to live, but you have to be comfortable with a life that's more slow burn than Blockbuster. Okay, now, we need to talk about Gary, Indiana. Because when it comes to cheap real estate, Gary is in a league of its own. This isn't just shockingly low rent. This is this a typo, or can I actually buy a house for the price of a used Honda Civic? The answer is yes, you can. The median rent is so low it barely registers. The city is practically giving away property. But there is a reason for this. A very, very big reason. Gary, Indiana, is probably the most extreme example of post-industrial collapse in America. Founded in 1906 by U.S. Steel, Gary was once a booming metropolis, the Magic City. It was the American dream forged in steel. But when the steel industry collapsed, it didn't just hurt Gary, it gutted it. The city lost over half its population. And it didn't just lose people, it lost its soul. What's left is a city of ghosts. Entire neighborhoods are abandoned, block after block of empty houses, crumbling schools, and majestic, decaying churches. Driving through parts of Gary feels like you've stumbled onto the set of a post-apocalyptic movie. The silence is what gets you. It's an eerie, unsettling quiet. You see a playground, but there are no children. You see a grand old theater, but the marquee is dark and rusted. The vacancy rate is astronomical, hovering near 25%. That's 1 in 4 buildings. The city government is trying, demolishing thousands of abandoned structures to fight the blight. But it's like trying to bail out the Titanic with a teaspoon. The scale of the decay is just overwhelming, and with that decay comes extreme poverty and a reputation for crime that makes it a national headline. So yes, you could move to Gary and live for virtually nothing. You could buy a huge, historic brick house for a few $1,000s, but what kind of life would you be living? You'd be an urban pioneer, in the truest, most hardcore sense of the word. You wouldn't just be fixing up a house, you'd be trying to resurrect a piece of a forgotten city. It's a place where the rent is cheap, because hope is expensive. For most people, the price of admission, the isolation, the lack of amenities, the pervasive sense of loss, is simply too high. Let's stay in the Rust Belt and head back to Ohio, to Youngstown. Much like its sister cities, Akron and Gary, Youngstown is a story written in steel and rust. The rent here is, you guessed it, incredibly low. You can find apartments for prices that will make your friend in San Francisco weep openly. The city is nestled in the Mahoning Valley, a once thriving industrial corridor that was the backbone of American manufacturing. It was a place where you could get a good job right out of high school, buy a house, and raise a family. Then came September 19, 1977, a day known locally as Black Monday. That was the day Youngstown Sheet and Tube announced the closure of its Campbell Works, instantly eliminating 5,000 jobs. It was the first domino in a catastrophic collapse that saw the region lose over 40,000 manufacturing jobs in 5 years. The city has been bleeding population ever since. People left in droves, and the houses they left behind became part of the landscape of loss. Youngstown became a national symbol for deindustrialization. The result is a city that feels patchy. You'll drive down a perfectly nice, well-kept street, and then turn a corner onto a block where half the houses are boarded up or gone altogether, leaving empty, overgrown lots that look like missing teeth in a smile. This phenomenon has a name: the Youngstown Shuffle. where residents move from decaying neighborhoods to more stable ones, creating a constant, slow-motion churn of abandonment and consolidation. The city is trying to manage the decline, embracing a shrinking city model, turning empty lots into green spaces. But there's a gritty, undeniable spirit here. Youngstown has a reputation for being tough, a place with deep roots in organized crime and bare-knuckle politics. It's a city that doesn't put on airs. There's a dark humor and a fierce pride among the people who have stayed. They're trying to build something new from the ashes, focusing on tech and university-led innovation. But it's an uphill battle. Moving to Youngstown for the cheap rent means living with the ghosts of Black Monday every single day. It's a place where the past isn't just history, it's the air you breathe. There are some cities whose names have become shorthand for a specific kind of tragedy. Flint, Michigan is one of them. And yes, the rent in Flint is very, very low. The housing market is actually one of the most affordable in the nation. But, I mean, we all know why. You can't talk about Flint without talking about the water crisis. It's a shadow that hangs over everything. A national scandal that poisoned a city's people and its reputation, perhaps permanently. The story is so much bigger than just dollars and cents. Before the water crisis, Flint was already a textbook example of a struggling Rust Belt city. The birthplace of General Motors, Flint was another titan of American industry that fell hard. The decline of the auto industry hollowed out the city, leading to massive population loss, urban decay, and high crime. The vacancy rate is high, and entire neighborhoods feel neglected. The water crisis wasn't the cause of Flint's problems. It was a horrific symptom of a city that had already been forgotten and left to fend for itself. The decision to switch the city's water source in 2014 to the Flint River was a catastrophic cost-cutting measure that had devastating consequences. The improperly treated water corroded the pipes, leaching lead into the drinking water of nearly 100,000 residents. The crisis exposed a terrifying breakdown of government at every level, and left a legacy of deep, profound mistrust. Even though the water system has been updated, and officials say it's safe, would you ever truly trust the water coming out of your tap? For many residents, the answer is no. Bottled water is still a way of life. Living in Flint means confronting this reality every day. The cheap rent is a direct result of this layered tragedy. It's a city of incredible resilience, full of passionate activists and community leaders who are fighting tirelessly for their home. But it's also a city grappling with long-term health consequences, deep psychological scars, and the stigma of being that place with the bad water. Moving to Flint is not a simple financial decision. It's a moral and ethical one. You're not just moving into a cheap apartment, you're moving into the heart of an ongoing American crisis. Now we go to a place you might not have even heard of: Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Tucked away in the Arkansas Delta, this city offers some of the absolute lowest housing costs in the entire United States. We're talking about a median home price that's a fraction of the national average. Rent is so low, you could probably pay for it by collecting the loose change in your couch. On paper, it's a financial paradise, a place where you could realistically live without the crushing weight of a mortgage or exorbitant rent. But Pine Bluff feels like a city the rest of the country has forgotten. It has one of the fastest shrinking populations in America. The decline is palpable. Driving through the city, you see the ghosts of a more prosperous time. Beautiful but decaying Victorian homes, a downtown with more empty storefronts than open ones. The economy, once reliant on paper mills and agriculture, has struggled to find its footing in the 21st century. The jobs left, and the people followed. This economic despair has a dark companion crime. Pine Bluff consistently ranks as one of the most dangerous cities in America, with a violent crime rate that is shockingly high for a city of its size. It creates a pervasive sense of insecurity. It's a city under siege, not from an outside force, but from within. The combination of economic hopelessness and high crime creates a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. The silence in the abandoned parts of town isn't peaceful, it's haunting. There are people in Pine Bluff working hard to turn things around, fighting to bring investment and hope back to their community. There's a new casino, a new library, and a fierce determination among those who have stayed. But the challenges are immense. It feels like a place adrift, disconnected from the economic currents of the rest of the country. Moving to Pine Bluff for the cheap rent is an extreme choice. You would be saving an incredible amount of money, but you'd be living in a place that feels like it's holding on by a thread, a quiet town, wrestling with some very loud demons. Let's head to the heart of Illinois, to Decatur, a city that proudly calls itself the soybean capital of the world. And if your dream is to live affordably, Decatur might be your kind of town. The rent is low, the cost of living is a bargain, and you can get a solid, decent house for a price that would barely get you a parking spot in Chicago. It's a city built on agriculture and industry, home to giants like Archer Daniels Midland and Caterpillar. It's a solid, no-frills Midwestern town. But solid and no frills can sometimes feel a lot like stagnation. Decatur is another city that has been slowly losing population for decades. It's not a dramatic collapse like in Gary or Youngstown, but more of a slow, steady leak. Young people grow up and move away for opportunities in bigger cities, and not enough people move in to replace them. The result is a city that feels paused. It's like someone hit the slow-mo button in the 1990s and never turned it off. The city's reliance on a few large industrial employers makes it vulnerable. When those companies have a bad quarter or decide to downsize, the whole town feels the tremor. And while being the soybean capital of the world is a great slogan, it also comes with a unique sensory experience. Depending on which way the wind is blowing, the air in Decatur can have a distinct aroma. Locals call it the smell of money, but for an outsider, it can be an acquired taste, to put it mildly. Living in Decatur is a trade-off. You get financial stability and a quiet, simple life. You can afford a comfortable existence without the stress of a major metropolitan area, but you also get a city that can feel insular and resistant to change. The excitement level is generally low, the cultural amenities are limited. It's a place where the biggest news of the week might be the high school football game. For some, that's a paradise. For others, that quiet can curdle into a deep, profound boredom. The rent is cheap, but you have to ask yourself if the pace of life is a price you're willing to pay. For our final city, we're going to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, a city whose name is synonymous with disaster. The Great Flood of 1889, which killed over 2,200 people, is seared into the American consciousness, and tragically, that wasn't the only one. Major floods also hit in 1936 and 1977. Johnstown is a city literally defined by its struggle against nature. Today, that struggle is more economic. The rent is incredibly cheap, a reflection of a city that has been fighting to stay afloat for a long, long time. Like so many other cities on this list, Johnstown was a powerhouse of coal and steel. When those industries died, the city's heart was torn out. The 1977 flood was a double blow, destroying much of the city just as the steel industry was beginning its final, terminal decline. The population has plummeted from a peak of nearly 70,000 to under 20,000 today. It's a staggering loss of people, and it has left the city with a surplus of housing and a deficit of hope. The landscape of Johnstown tells this story. It's nestled in a beautiful, steep valley, which is precisely what makes it so vulnerable to floods. The architecture is a mix of sturdy, historic buildings that survived the disasters and the scars of what was lost. There's a deep, melancholic nostalgia here. The Johnstown Flood Museum is a major landmark, a constant reminder of the city's tragic past. It's a place where history isn't just in books, it's a living, breathing part of the community's identity. Living in Johnstown means embracing that history and that grit. The people who remain are tough, resilient, and deeply proud of their town's ability to survive, but the opportunities are scarce. The city feels isolated, and the winters are tough. And then there's the deer. With the shrinking population, nature is reclaiming parts of the city. It's not uncommon to see deer running through neighborhoods like they own the place, like a furry, four-legged gang. It's a surreal symbol of the city's transformation. The rent is cheap, but you're moving to a place that's still trying to outrun the ghosts of its past, both natural and economic. So, there you have it. 10 cities where the rent is low, but the living ain't always easy. Think you know the best-kept secrets in America? Okay, let's see how many of these you've actually heard of, or would actually move to. From Tulsa's $10,000 handshake to Gary's apocalyptic quiet. These aren't just dots on a map. They're living, breathing case studies in the American experiment. And wait till you see the city where the deer run the neighborhood like a gang. Oh wait, you just did! Johnstown? What's up? The allure of cheap rent is powerful. It feels like a cheat code for life. a way to escape the financial pressure cooker that defines so many of our major cities. But as we've seen, that low price tag often comes with hidden costs, lack of opportunity, high crime, urban decay, or just a soul-crushing sense of isolation and boredom. A cheap city can be a launchpad for your dreams, a place where you can finally afford to take a risk. But choose the wrong cheap city and you might save a few bucks, but burn a few years of your life feeling stuck. The point isn't to scare you away from these places, it's to show you the full picture, the one you won't get from a glossy, best places to live listicle. The truth is, the right move is different for everyone, but knowledge is power. So before you pack your U-Haul and chase that 4-figure rent, do your real homework. Like this video if you've ever scrolled Zillow just to feel something. Subscribe if you want the truth. No realtor is ever going to tell you because rent may be cheap, but the wrong move. That's expensive. Let's break it down.